They say money can't buy happiness, but I didn't understand that until I lost the one thing I couldn't replace. This is the story of how my world shattered and how I found my true worth again. My name is Elaine Harper, and I'm 68 years old. If you saw me walking down the street, you'd probably think I was just another well-groomed older woman with silver hair and kind blue eyes, living out her golden years in quiet comfort. And for most of my life, that's exactly what I thought I was supposed to be: comfortable, polite, put together, never wanting for anything. My late husband Richard and I built a good life together. We owned a thriving real estate business in a small but growing town in Oregon. We bought our forever home, took yearly trips to the coast, and hosted big family dinners every Sunday. When Richard passed away 15 years ago, it hurt deeply, but I held it together because of my son, David. He was my only child, my pride, my comfort, and, unknowingly, the glue holding the fragments of my life together. David was 42 when he died. In a car accident. It was a rainy Thursday morning, and I was ironing pillowcases when the knock came at my door. 2 officers stood there, hats in hand, faces solemn. I remember clutching the iron so hard that I burned my palm before I realized I was still holding it. They told me there had been a collision on Highway 22. David didn't make it. His wife Lily survived with minor injuries, but my David, my boy who used to run barefoot in our backyard, who carried boxes for me when my back started to go, who called every Friday to check if I needed groceries, was gone at that moment. The millions I had in the bank meant nothing. The spacious house I'd carefully decorated felt cold and empty. My heart felt like a room where the windows had been thrown open in winter and nothing could warm it again. Lily came to stay with me for a few weeks after the funeral, but it was clear she was lost in her grief too. I tried to cook for her, tried to sit with her in the evenings, but the silence between us was heavy. She was only 38, with their 8-year-old daughter Emily to care for. One evening, Lily looked at me with tear-filled eyes and said, "I don't know how to do this without him." I didn't know either. David's funeral was beautiful, if such a thing can be called that. Hundreds came to pay respects, sharing stories about his kindness, his work ethic, his goofy sense of humor. But I felt like a ghost in the room, sitting in the front row in my black dress, clutching the tissue Lily had handed me as if it could anchor me to the world. My friends whispered about how strong I was, how well I was holding it together, but inside, I was screaming. After the funeral, the house was quiet, too quiet. I would sit in David's old room, still painted in the soft blue he'd picked out as a teenager, and run my hands over the trophies on the shelf, the framed photos of him with his high school football team, the graduation cap he'd left behind before moving out to start his own family at 68. I realized I had built a life that looked perfect on paper, but was paper thin where it mattered. I had investments, properties, and accounts neatly organized in files, but I had no idea how to fill the emptiness David's absence left behind. Days turned into weeks. I woke up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the empty driveway where David's truck used to pull in every Friday with Emily in the back seat, her little face pressed against the window, waving excitedly at me. I would wave back, holding the screen door open, waiting to sweep her into a hug. Those Fridays were the highlight of my weeks, a chance to be grandma instead of just Elaine. But now there was no truck, no Friday phone calls, no "Hi, Grandma," followed by sticky kisses and giggles as Emily pulled me toward the kitchen to see what snacks I had prepared. Instead, there was silence. One morning, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, brushing my hair and asking myself, who am I now? Was I still a mother when my child was gone? Was I still a grandmother if I only saw Emily during the occasional visit Lily could manage in her grief? The grief became a fog I couldn't escape, and I realized that the life I thought I had, the security, the purpose, the joy was all tied to the one person I could never get back. People tried to comfort me with platitudes. At least you had him for 42 years. At least you're financially secure. At least you have Emily. But the "at least" did nothing to soften the sharp, jagged edges of loss that cut into me every morning when I woke up alone. One afternoon, I found a voicemail from David that I had forgotten to delete. His voice was cheerful, reminding me that Emily had a piano recital the next day and that he would pick me up at 5. I replayed that message so many times that I memorized every inflection, every pause, every chuckle in his voice when he teased me about not forgetting to wear my nice shoes. It hurt, but I couldn't stop listening. It was all I had left of him that felt alive at 68. I thought I had everything: a comfortable life, a secure future, a well-planned retirement, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had done things right. But after David died, I learned that all of that meant nothing when the people you love are gone. And that is where my story truly begins, not in the comfort of a secure life, but in the moment I realized I had lost what truly mattered. because in that moment of devastating loss, I discovered that I had to find a way to keep living, to redefine what everything really meant. And that is what I will share with you in the parts that follow. They say grief comes in waves, but for me it felt like a heavy tide that never went out, dragging at my ankles as I tried to walk through each day. After David's funeral, I tried to keep busy, thinking maybe I could outrun the emptiness. I went through his paperwork to help Lily sort out the insurance and the house, thinking of it as my last duty as a mother. I remember sitting at his kitchen table, the same table where we had shared so many family meals, sorting through documents while Emily played quietly in the living room, her small face pale and her eyes too big for a child who had seen her father lowered into the ground. I wanted to reach out to her, but every time I opened my mouth, I felt the tears pushing up my throat, choking the words before they could leave. Lily was trying to... She would move through the house like a ghost, folding Emily's clothes, washing dishes, staring out the window where David's car used to be. Sometimes I would hear her crying softly in the bathroom, the sound of her grief pressing against the walls, mixing with mine. One evening, I found Emily sitting on the floor in David's old office, clutching one of his flannel shirts. Her small hands were wrapped so tightly around the fabric that her knuckles were white. I knelt beside her, unsure of what to say, and she looked up at me with those big, sorrowful blue eyes, whispering, "Grandma, is Daddy ever coming back?" It was the question I had been asking myself every day. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could, letting the tears fall freely as I whispered, "No, sweetheart, he isn't. But he loved you so much, and he will always be in our hearts." She cried into my shoulder, her small body shaking, and in that moment, I felt like a mother again, like a grandmother again, like a person again. But when I returned home to my quiet house that night, the silence pressed against me like a weight, reminding me that I was alone again. Days passed and the routines became mechanical. Wake up, make coffee, sit in silence, try to read a book but stare at the page without seeing the words, eat something just to keep going. The money in the bank stayed untouched, useless in the face of grief. One morning as I sat in the kitchen, I noticed the hummingbirds outside my window, darting between the feeders I had filled, their tiny wings moving so fast they were just a blur. David used to love watching them with me. "Mom, they're like tiny miracles," he would say, his eyes lighting up as he tried to get Emily to spot them. She would squeal in delight, clapping her hands as the birds zipped around. As I watched the hummingbirds, I realized how long it had been since I had felt delight in anything. It struck me hard and sudden that David would have hated to see me like this, existing but not living, breathing but not feeling. That day, I decided to visit Lily and Emily, bringing over a casserole, like I used to when David was alive. When I arrived, Emily ran to me, hugging my legs, her small arms wrapped around me as she looked up and whispered, "Grandma, can you stay?" I hesitated, looking at Lily, who nodded silently, tears in her eyes. That evening, I read Emily a bedtime story in her small pink room, filled with stuffed animals and drawings she had made. As I read, she snuggled closer, her head resting against my arm. When I finished, she looked up and said, "Grandma, will you be here when I wake up?" It broke something in me, something that needed to break. "Yes, sweetheart, I'll be here," I promised. That night, I slept in the guest room, the same room I used to stay in during holidays. The bed was small, the blankets soft, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up in the middle of the night gasping for air. Instead, I woke up to the sound of Emily's laughter as she ran down the hallway, her small feet pattering against the wood floors, and for a moment, I felt alive again. Over the next few weeks, I started spending more time at Lily's house, helping her with Emily, cooking meals, picking Emily up from school, listening to her chatter about her day, holding her when the grief crept up in quiet moments. Lily and I began to heal together, slowly, painfully, but together. We talked about David, sharing stories about him, laughing through our tears, keeping his memory alive in the way we lived. One afternoon, Lily and I sat on the porch, watching Emily play in the yard. The sun was warm, the sky clear, and I turned to Lily saying, "I know I can't replace David, but I want to be here for you and Emily for as long as you'll have me." She took my hand, her eyes soft, and said, "Your family, Elaine, you always will be." At 68, I thought I had everything: a secure life, a strong future, a comfortable retirement. But it took losing David to realize that what I truly needed wasn't in the accounts I had built or the properties I had managed. It was in the laughter of my granddaughter, the shared tears with my daughter-in-law, the small moments of connection that reminded me I was still alive, still loved, and still needed. And that is how I began to rebuild. One small moment at a time, learning that while I couldn't change the past, I could still honor David by living a life filled with the love he had given me, sharing that love with the family he left behind, Grief changes you, but it also sharpens what matters. As weeks turned into months, my days began to have color again. Emily's laughter became the background music of my mornings, and Lily's quiet strength became my anchor. Every morning I would help pack Emily's lunch, slipping in a small note that said, "Grandma loves you," in her backpack. She would hug me so tightly before leaving for school, and it reminded me that love, even in the smallest gestures, keeps us alive. Lily and I spent many evenings on the porch, sipping tea as the sky turned shades of lavender and rose. We shared stories about David, about how stubborn he was when he decided to build that treehouse for Emily, how he once burned a turkey on Thanksgiving because he wanted to handle everything himself. We laughed, sometimes cried, but each memory stitched us together. One Saturday, Emily came into the kitchen wearing her father's old baseball cap, which was far too big for her small head. "Grandma, Daddy wore this when he took me to the park. Can we go today, please?" she asked, her eyes shining. I looked at Lily, who nodded, a small smile on her tired face. We packed a small picnic and headed to the same park where David used to play catch with Emily. As we walked through the park, memories of David carrying Emily on his shoulders, pushing her on the swings, and chasing her around the slides came flooding back. Emily ran to the swings, calling out, "Grandma, push me higher." I smiled, pushing her gently as she giggled, her laughter ringing through the air like a song I didn't know I needed to hear. For a moment I closed my eyes and imagined David standing there, his arms crossed, watching us with that gentle smile he always had when he was content. "Higher, Grandma, I want to touch the sky," Emily shouted, her small legs kicking with excitement. I opened my eyes, tears blurring my vision, but I smiled, pushing her higher, letting her feel the freedom her father always wanted her to know. Afterward, we sat on a blanket under the tree David used to love, eating sandwiches and sharing stories. Emily lay down with her head in my lap, looking up at the clouds. "Grandma, do you think Daddy can see us?" she asked softly. I looked up at the sky, the clouds drifting lazily, and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart. I believe he's watching over us, smiling and loving us." She closed her eyes, a small smile on her face, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace settle in my heart. That night, Lily and I sat together after Emily went to bed, the soft glow of the lamp casting warmth in the room. "Elaine," Lily began, her voice hesitant, "I don't know what I would have done without you here." I reached out, taking her hand, feeling the warmth and the tremble. "Lily, we're family. We're stronger together. David would have wanted us to lean on each other." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes, and we sat in silence, letting the grief and gratitude coexist in that moment. The next day, while cleaning out a box of David's old belongings, I found a small, weathered journal. It was one of those cheap notebooks you get at the store, with a blue cover and lined pages. When I opened it, I saw David's handwriting, messy and familiar, and at the top of the first page, it said, "Things I'm grateful for." As I read through the list, tears fell freely. Mom's cooking, Emily's laugh, Lily's smile watching the hummingbirds with Mom, late night talks with Lily, Emily's first steps, Mom's hugs. Each line felt like a message from David, reminding me of what truly mattered. It wasn't the money in the bank, the cars, or the properties. It was love, family, moments. I shared the journal with Lily, and we decided to create a gratitude jar for Emily, teaching her to write down something she was grateful for each day. At first, it was simple things like mac and cheese and my pink shoes. But soon it became Grandma reading me stories and Mommy hugging me. One evening, Emily pulled out one of her notes, handing it to me with a shy smile. It said, "I'm grateful Grandma lives with us now." I hugged her tightly, whispering, "I'm grateful too, sweetheart." Slowly, life began to feel like living again. Lily started going back to her art, painting small canvases in the evenings. While Emily and I baked cookies, we would dance around the kitchen, Emily giggling as she tried to keep up with my slow dance moves, flower in her hair, joy in her laughter at night. As I lay in bed, I would close my eyes and thank David for the love he had left behind, the family he had built, and the life he had encouraged me to keep living even in his absence. At 68, I had thought I had everything. I had money, security, and a future that I believed was enough. But it took losing David to teach me that the real wealth was in the small moments, the shared smiles, the laughter of a child, and the quiet strength of a family holding each other up in the storm. And so I kept going, step by step, learning that grief and love can walk hand in hand, that healing doesn't mean forgetting, and that in honoring David's memory, I was also learning to honor my own life. The days continued, and with each sunrise I found a new reason to get up. One morning I woke early to the soft sound of rain against the window. I walked into the kitchen to find Lily already there, holding her coffee cup, staring out at the gray sky, her eyes were tired, but there was a softness in them I hadn't seen in months. "Morning," I whispered, not wanting to disturb the peace. She looked at me, a small smile forming. "Morning, Elaine. I was just thinking about David. He loved the rain." I nodded, memories flooding in of David jumping in puddles as a little boy, his laughter echoing in the yard, soaked from head to toe, but never once complaining. "Do you remember how he used to run outside without a raincoat?" I asked, a chuckle escaping me. Lily's smile widened, her eyes glistening. "He said the rain felt like a hug from the sky." We both stood there, the quiet of the morning wrapping around us like a warm blanket. It was in these small moments that I felt David's presence the most, reminding me that love doesn't disappear with death, it lingers in the spaces left behind. Later that day, Emily came running into the kitchen, holding up a drawing she made at school. "Grandma, look. I drew you and Mommy and Daddy in the sky watching us." I took the paper, tears welling in my eyes as I saw the stick figures holding hands above a house, with Emily and me standing below, smiling. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, hugging her tightly. "Daddy told me in my dreams that he's watching us," she said matter-of-factly, her innocence shining through. I looked at Lily, who was trying to hold back tears, and we both smiled, nodding. "Yes, he is," I whispered, brushing Emily's hair back from her face. That weekend, we decided to do something we hadn't done in a long time: bake David's favorite chocolate chip cookies. Emily stood on a small stool helping me mix the batter, her small hands covered in flour. Lily joined us, measuring the chocolate chips and sneaking a few into Emily's mouth, making her giggle. As the cookies baked, the sweet smell filled the house, bringing back memories of holidays, birthdays, and quiet evenings when David would steal cookies off the cooling rack when he thought I wasn't looking. We sat around the kitchen table, eating warm cookies and sipping milk, laughter and stories flowing easily. Emily told us about her school project, how she wanted to be a teacher like her favorite Ms. Parker, and Lily shared how she was thinking of going back to work, maybe part-time, to ease herself back into the world. "Mom," Lily said softly, "I don't know if I'm ready, but I think it's time." I reached across the table, taking her hand. "David would want you to live your life, Lily. You don't have to rush, but when you're ready, it's okay to take that step." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, but her smile was genuine. "Thank you, Elaine, for everything." The following week, Emily had a school recital. She was going to sing a small solo, and she was nervous, practicing every day after school. The night before, she came to my room, crawling into my lap. "Grandma, what if I forget the words?" she asked, her big blue eyes looking up at me with worry. I hugged her close, rocking her gently. "If you forget, just take a deep breath and keep going. Everyone is there because they love you, and they're proud of you no matter what." The next evening, we sat in the school auditorium, the lights dim, parents and grandparents chatting quietly as they waited. When it was Emily's turn, I felt my heart swell with pride as she walked onto the stage, holding the microphone with small, trembling hands. She looked out at the audience, her eyes searching until they found us. I smiled, nodding. Cheeks, and I clapped as hard as I could, my heart full. After the recital, Emily ran into my arms. "I did it, Grandma. I didn't forget." I hugged her tightly, kissing the top of her head. "You were amazing, sweetheart. Your daddy would be so proud of you." That night, as we sat together in the living room, Emily snuggled between us. Lily whispered, "Mom, I think I'm ready to start living again." I smiled, tears in my eyes. "Then let's live, Lily. Let's live for David, and let's live for ourselves." The grief was still there, a quiet ache that would never fully leave, but it was no longer the loudest thing in the room. It was replaced by laughter, by memories, by the small moments of love that filled the spaces David left behind. Out at 68, I thought I had everything. I had money, security, a future that I believed was enough. But it took losing David to teach me that the real wealth was in the love we give and receive, in the moments that make us feel alive, and in the family that holds us up when we can't stand on our own. And so we kept going, finding light in the darkness, love in the loss, and hope in the everyday moments that reminded us that David was still with us, in every smile, every laugh, and every breath we took. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting alone on the porch in the soft glow of the evening light, watching Emily chase fireflies in the yard. Her laughter floated through the air, mixing with the gentle chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was one of those moments when grief and gratitude sit side by side, reminding you of what you've lost and what you still Have Lily stepped outside, holding 2 cups of tea, and sat down beside me. Her eyes were tired but calmer, her hair gently blowing in the breeze. "Mom," she said softly, handing me a cup, "do you ever stop missing him?" I looked down at the tea, swirling it gently before meeting her gaze. "No, sweetheart. You never stop missing them. But you learn to live with the love they left behind." She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Sometimes I'm so angry, and sometimes I just feel empty." I reached over, taking her hand. "That's okay. Grief isn't a straight path. Lily, some days will hurt more than others, but it doesn't mean you're going backward. It just means you loved him deeply." Emily came running up to us, holding a glowing jar with fireflies dancing inside. "Look, Mommy, Grandma, look." We both smiled, leaning forward as she held it up proudly, the soft light illuminating her joyful face. In that moment, I saw so much of David in her, the same bright eyes, the same fearless curiosity, the same ability to find wonder in the smallest things. "Can they stay with me forever?" Emily asked, peering into the jar. I smiled softly. "They need to fly free, sweetheart. But while they're here, we can enjoy their light." Emily thought for a moment before opening the jar, watching as the tiny lights floated up into the night, disappearing into the dark sky. She clapped her hands, looking up, and whispered, "Goodbye, little lights." Lily and I exchanged a look, both of us recognizing the unspoken truth in that moment. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means allowing what we love to live on, even if it's in a different form. The next morning, Lily asked me to come with her to the cemetery. We hadn't gone together since the funeral, both of us too afraid of the heavy silence that seemed to follow us there. Emily held my hand tightly as we walked through the rows of headstones, the morning sun casting long shadows across the grass. When we reached David's grave, Lily knelt down, placing a small bouquet of wildflowers on the stone. "I brought you your favorite," she whispered, her voice breaking. Emily reached out, touching the stone gently. "Hi, Daddy," she said, softly, her small voice carrying so much love. I stood behind them, letting them have their moment, the breeze carrying the scent of fresh grass and wildflowers. I closed my eyes, remembering David's laughter, his smile, the way he would hug Lily and lift Emily into the air, spinning her around until she squealed with delight. Lily looked up at me, tears streaming down her cheeks, and I knelt beside her, pulling her into a hug. Emily joined us, wrapping her small arms around both of us, and for a moment it felt like David was there, holding us all together. "We're going to be okay," I whispered, more to myself than to them, but I felt the truth of it in my bones. That evening, back at the house, Lily and I sat in the living room while Emily played with her dolls on the floor. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the suffocating silence of grief anymore. It was the quiet of healing, of learning to live again, Mom, Lily said, looking at me with tired but determined eyes. "I've decided to take that part-time teaching job." I smiled, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "I'm so proud of you, Lily. I think it will help Emily too. Having a routine again," she continued, glancing at her daughter, who was now singing softly to her dolls. "Yes," I agreed, "and it will help you too. It's okay to live, Lily. It's what David would have wanted." She nodded, taking a deep breath. "Thank you, Mom, for being here." "There's nowhere else I'd rather be," I said, my voice soft but firm. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything we had lost, but also everything we still had. The grief was still there, but so was the love. It was in the way Emily laughed, in the way Lily was finding her strength again, and in the quiet moments when I allowed myself to remember David with a smile instead of tears. At 68, I had thought I had everything, but it took losing David to show me what truly mattered. Not the money, not the security, but the moments, the small, precious moments of love and connection that make life worth living. And as I drifted off to sleep, I whispered a quiet promise to David, wherever he was, "We're living, David. We're living for you." The days began to fall into a gentle rhythm. I would wake up early, brew a pot of coffee, and watch the sunrise paint the sky in soft pinks and golds while the world was still quiet. It was in those moments I felt closest to David, as if he was sitting there with me, sipping coffee, sharing the silence. Emily would wake up, her hair a wild halo around her face, and run into the kitchen, her small arms wrapping around my waist as she whispered, "Good morning, Grandma." That alone was enough to warm the chill that grief sometimes left in my bones. Lily was slowly finding her footing again. She started teaching part-time, and I would watch her leave in the mornings with a determined look in her eyes, holding her coffee, keys in hand, and a softness in her that was beginning to return. After school, Emily would run through the door with stories about her day, her tiny backpack bouncing on her shoulders, and Lily would sit with her at the table, helping her with drawings and listening to her chatter. I would watch them, and I saw David in both of them, in the way Emily's eyes sparkled with wonder, and in the way Lily would smile when Emily did something funny. That same crinkle in her eyes David once had. One afternoon we decided to visit the park together. Emily wanted to fly her kite, a bright yellow one with a long, swirling tail, and Lily packed a small picnic for us to share at the park. Emily's laughter filled the air as she ran, her kite dancing in the breeze, rising high against the clear, blue sky. Lily said quietly. "She's healing, Lily," I replied, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You both are." Tears welled in Lily's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She took a deep breath, letting the wind carry away the heaviness that still lingered in her chest. Later, as we sat on the picnic blanket, Emily brought us wildflowers she had picked, her small hands proudly presenting them to us. Lily took them, pressing them to her heart, before placing them in my hands. "For Daddy," Emily said softly, looking down for a moment before looking back up with a small, brave smile. "For Daddy," I echoed, squeezing her hand gently. That evening, Lily and I sat on the porch again, the stars glittering above us, the warm breeze rustling the trees. Emily had fallen asleep on the couch inside, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. "Exhausted from the day, I've been thinking," Lily said, breaking the comfortable silence. "About what you said about living?" I turned to her, waiting patiently. "I want to live again, Mom," she whispered, her voice shaking. "For Emily, for me, for David." She nodded, wiping her tears, and we sat there, the quiet of the night wrapping around us like a comforting blanket. It was a moment of peace, a promise to ourselves and to David that we would continue, not just surviving, but living, truly living. A few weeks later, Emily's school held a small spring concert, and Lily was hesitant about going. Crowds still made her nervous, and the thought of seeing other families, of feeling David's absence, made her chest tighten. But that evening, she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress, taking deep breaths as I stood beside her. "You're strong, Lily," I reminded her softly. "Stronger than you know." She looked at me, her reflection showing a tired but determined mother, ready to face the world for her daughter. At the concert, Emily stood on the stage, her small voice joining the other children as they sang their songs, her eyes searching the crowd until they found us. She beamed, waving enthusiastically, and Lily waved back, tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of pride. When it was over, Emily ran into Lily's arms, her laughter ringing out. For a moment, it felt like the world was whole again that night. As I tucked Emily into bed, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Grandma, do you think Daddy can see me sing?" I smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "I think he saw every moment, sweetheart, and he's so proud of you." She smiled, her eyes closing as she drifted off to sleep in the quiet of the night. I sat alone for a while, looking at the family pictures on the mantel, David's smile frozen in time, and I whispered a promise into the darkness. "We're living, David, we're really living." At 68, I had thought I had everything: a life of security, a comfortable retirement, and the quiet certainty of stability. But losing David shattered that illusion, leaving me to rebuild from the pieces. And in those pieces, I found the truth. What mattered was not the numbers in the bank, but the laughter of a child, the strength of a daughter learning to stand again, and the small, ordinary moments that became extraordinary simply because we shared them. Love was what mattered. Love that stayed, even when someone was gone. Love that healed, even when it hurt. Love that taught us how to live, again and again.